know it's been a while. I've been away on life stuff. However, here's a really interesting two-part conversation that I had with a good friend and sports psychologist, Kanyali Ilako. Fun fact, Kanyali is currently in Tokyo for the Olympics with the Kenyan team, ensuring that they bring the best out of themselves. During this episode, we talk through building resilience through sports and bringing up kids. We talk about some useful tips to keep in mind with exercising, and so on and so forth. All of this while having a really fun and chilled conversation. Just a quick heads up. There's some slight knocking background noise from the 11th minute to the 15th minute. It's nothing too crazy, but I wanted to give you a heads up so that you stay through it. So please stay through it. So tune in, enjoy, and I welcome you to engage. Ladies and gentlemen, the episode. So, just starting right off the bat, what is sports psychology?
Okay, thank you for this, Ola. It's nice to be able to be given, these platforms to talk about this particular thing that is still new. So, sports psychology, like you've asked, what is it? So, it kind of can be broken down into three different categories, I would say. So the first one is mostly to do with the research side of things.
Okay.
So it's just like understanding how participating in physical activity or sport affects your mind, and then with that it affects your overall health and well-being. And then the second one is to kind of understand the different psychological factors that you can use to enhance performance of the physical activity and the sports. And then the third one now, which comes now to like practicality or applicability, is now enhancing or giving people the skills and strategies to be able to perform in the adverse situations of competitive sports. And also just how to be able to deal with the day-to-day lives, because people usually a lot of the times, because I work with a lot of the times I do mostly the sports side. So there's sports and exercise psychology.
Okay.
So exercise is just for people who want to start and maintain a physical activity routine, whereas for sports it's now going now deeper into the competitive level and getting into the optimum performance level. So maybe big top competitions like the Commonwealth Games or the Olympic Games. So it's now also now, because people forget a lot of the times that athletes, they're humans first. So they just assume that they can take anything and everything that is given to them. So it's just being able to come up with strategies or help them with strategies to deal with or be able to handle the stress of the environment that they're in, but also, also remember that they're human beings. So how are they able to also handle their day-to-day lives?
Awesome. That's very great. So a couple of things jumped out to me there. First of all, day-to-day. What's your day-to-day in this space? What's it like just briefly, for instance?
So my particular day-to-day is it depends. Because like I said, I work with athletes. So, and athletes are always on the move. They don't have one specific. So usually I get asked, also, where's your office? And it's I go, it's because it's
it's very of the athlete.
Nice one, I'll use that. No, so it depends, because athletes are always on the move, and then a lot of the athletes are not in one space. You'll have athletes coming from different cities and different towns. So in terms of how a normal day looks like, it would vary. When it's competition time, it's very busy. But then when it's pre-season or post-season, it's not that busy. It's maybe I would maybe do 1 or 2 sessions a week. And then it also depends on, am I dealing with a team or am I dealing with an individual? It also now varies
Awesome.
that way.
You also mentioned something about exercise, the exercise side of things.
Yes.
So I would assume that those clients, quote unquote, are non-sport clients, just regular. Explain that a little bit.
So basically, so to go back to now being able to give in the skills and strategies.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times is that, so it's usually sports, exercise, actually I forgot, it's sports, exercise and performance psychology.
Okay.
So some people decide to take all three and work with people. Some people just decide, I'm only going to work with sports people, or I'm only going to work with performance. So performance is not even in the sport and exercise
Mhm,
field. It's
yeah.
like for businesses and
Exactly.
corporates, yeah.
Exactly.
And then exercises now are, yes, they're generally what you're talking about. So when I'm talking about like the exercises, theirs is just to help them with different performance techniques to continue to, because the issue is usually maintaining an exercise strategy. Or like, an exercise routine.
Yeah.
So you'll start off strong, you have all these people who come to you in January, like, yeah, I'm ready for the year.
January
And then
1.
in like March, they're like, oh yeah, I stopped going to the gym.
We'll
So
pick
it's
that
like,
up next
exactly,
year, January 1.
exactly. So it's like kind of coming, like now figuring out ways in which you can incorporate their exercise into their day-to-day programs. Yeah.
Nice. So to jump around a little bit, do you have any tips for people or anything that you realized having worked with people in the course of this career path that can help them stick to those resolutions, quote unquote?
I think the
especially
first
from
one,
an exercise perspective.
yeah, the first one I always say is that there's, what are your goals?
Okay.
People come in and they're like, yeah, I want to look like this by, let's say, December. Or for example, let's even pick like let's say women would come and be like, oh yeah, I was proposed to, let's say, and our wedding is at the end of the year and I want to look like this by the end of the year. Fine, that's great to have a long-term goal. But what are your short-term goals? What are you doing in between? So it's like figuring out, and people just assume that a goal is a linear thing. It's like, I'm here today and I'm going to be there tomorrow. But there's so many steps and bounds and leaps in between. So first of all, it's like, yeah, taking your long-term goal, but then what are you doing in the short term? So now let's work it backwards. People work forward, but I always say let's work backwards. So that's where you want to be. Okay. So now what are you doing 6 months from now? Where do you want to be? 3 months from now, where do you want to be? 2 weeks from now, where do you want to be? Tomorrow, where do you want to be? So that way there's something you're looking forward to. And sometimes, a lot of the times when you look at where you're at now and where you want to be in a year, it seems like, no, I'll never get there, so I'm not going to do it.
Sure.
And then the other thing is, once you face those hurdles, always remind yourself of your why. I always say either write it down, have someone to remind you, have an alarm clock or something, or have it, remind yourself of your why. Why did you start? Why are you here? Why are you doing this? That way, whenever you hit the hurdles, you can always go back to your whys. And then another one would be writing or talking about your little successes, those little wins. We take them for granted, but they come a long way. So like, if today you are not able to run, let's say if today you started at 2 miles, and then next week you're at 5, just jot that down somewhere. And then the next, let's say in a month's time, when you're feeling that lethargy, go back and look at your performances. Oh yeah, okay, I'm not doing too badly, I'm actually progressing. That gives you the extra push, Yeah.
Nice. That's really well put. So to push forward a little bit, sports psychology.
Yes.
So let's break those out into two. Let's start with sports first, and not just sports, exercise, all of that we bundle into that category. So what would you say? I mean, without like giving like the traditional, yeah, it's good answer, how important would you say sports are? Like proper scheduled planned sports. I go play soccer on Sunday. I play badminton with my friends on Saturday. How important is that in one's routine as adults?
I think it's extremely important. And I'll say this because on a scientific level, it helps. Just generally, it's a good way to release adults. We have a lot of things that we have to deal with.
Adulting.
Adulting is hard, and not talking about the responsibilities that come with adulting, And so first of all, participating in sports or in that particular activity is taking you out and giving yourself time, because, we're talking about responsibilities. An adult has to take care of so many things. Let's say if you have a family, a spouse, a job.
You have to take care of your boss.
You take care of your, exactly. You have to take care of so many things. So you participating in sport is one, you've now, first of all, like, you've given yourself a set time in the week to just think about yourself, and that is really important because, it keeps you going.
Yeah.
And then secondly, now on a scientific level, it releases, the feel-good hormones, the dopamine and the serotonin, and that, that also is really good for your health. And then just generally also for your mind. People forget that exercising is also really good for your mind. They see it as a physical thing. I've had people say, or like maybe in like general discussions,
Mhm.
you'll have someone who says, yeah, I exercise every day, and I've had someone say, but you're not skinny. And it's like, people have such different goals, and also
Yeah.
you forget that there's different health elements to exercise. So
Mhm.
maybe this person who is not skinny or not looking ideal, to
Quote
someone who
unquote,
is,
yeah.
someone who is supposed to be exercising,
Mhm.
their mind might be better, than the
Mhm.
person who has been, who is skinny or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's also really good for the mind.
Yeah.
It's
And I
also
also
really
think
important
that
for the mind.
as we get older, with a lot of relationships being transactional and things like that. Back when I used to play soccer a lot, I used to have like a team of soccer guys, and we were not friends by the traditional friendship standards. However, when I went, it was like, this is my community here, and I feel like that community building, that community feeling, as you get older, is also very, very important.
Exactly. Yeah. And having a group of like-minded people also just generally helps you as you're going through the stresses of life.
Yeah. True. So one of the things that I'm very curious about, so on Saturdays sometimes I go for a run, but while I'm running, I really don't think of it as running. I don't think of it as exercising. I generally think of it as me being out to play. It's almost like I'm 4 years old again. My father allowed me to go play with my friends, and then we're doing. There's this thing we used to have in Nigeria. We used to call it 10-10, and then where you're just like in the sun and things like that. So sometimes I think of it as play. So, and I think that as kids we played a lot. Play has been tied to a lot of things in research, creativity, feel good hormones. You tire out your body, you re-energize, you strengthen your musculature, all of that. So I think overall, I would say that play is very important. I'm curious to hear your perspective on that, as well as the dichotomy between sports and play. Where do you think that line is? Are they the same? Are they separate? From a non-professional perspective, because I don't think Tiger Woods is like, oh yeah, we're gonna play.
We're gonna play. No, that's true. I think they're exactly. I mean, well, I wouldn't say exactly the same thing, but play starts off, and then when it gets to sport is when now you start to rankings and medals and times and all those things. But I still think that even as you're in your sport, you should still think of it as play or fun, because that way you focusing on the wins and the losses affects your mentality. So if you're going into a game, and I've seen it with the athletes that I've worked with, like if you just take two different groups of people, if they go into the game as we're just going to have fun, the likelihood of them winning is really high. But if they're going in to the game as we have to win, the likelihood of them losing is higher. So yes, you have to start, and I think yes, what you say is really important, that we have to start thinking of exercise and sport as play, because then we're able to stick to it longer. Who doesn't like to play?
Yeah, right.
So like, so if you just say like even your exercise routine, and that's actually something I will now, thanks for the tip, I'll now be telling like the clients that I work with, that think of it as you're playing. Think of it as you're playing with your younger sibling, your child, your niece, your nephew. So
in adulthood, I think being able to bring out that inner child is very, very important. I do a lot of weightlifting, and sometimes when I go, I'm in the gym in an enclosed space, but then I try to lift and it's really heavy. I drop it and I'm like, yeah. I go over here, I act pumped, all of that, and I go back. And it's like, it's fun. You kind of look forward to it. And like you said, all things being equal, the team that has lower pressure going into the game, assuming that they have the same baseline of preparation and so on and so forth, will more approach things in a more open-minded, more flexible, adaptive manner during the game, right? And what would you say is like the role of being able to have mental agility to adapt in sports?
Oh, it's so important. That mental toughness is so important, because like I was mentioning earlier, the life of an athlete is so hectic.
Mm-hmm.
And you're literally like, your life is like, your career is on the line,
Yeah.
based on, at the end of the day, your sponsors need numbers, your coaches need like, it comes down to, yes, your performance is being equated to, are you going to make it to the next season or not?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's very, very important to work on your mental toughness before, because I mean, in anything in life, you're going to win and lose, but how are you going to handle the losses? How is your bounce back going to be compared to, the next team or the next person? And yeah, so that's why it's very, very important to work with them. And I think I like to work with people from a younger age. It's a lot. It's the whole saying, and it's true, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So, I've tried to work with elite athletes, I've tried to work with elite athletes who are already like set in their ways. And so you see, yes, they'll improve, but very, very minimal. But when you work with like kids from between the ages of like 11 to 18, the progress is so vast, because of course their minds are still expanding, they're still open to, they're sponging, they're taking it in, they're still open to different ideas and whatnot. And then of course their bodies are also still growing, so you're more likely to create an impact that way. So it's important. And also I would like to also say that it's these skills that we work with are very transferable to every other aspect of life. Which is
and we're going to talk about that. I think that would be like what we'd round off with, because even starting, you said it's sports, exercise, and performance psychology, right? And the performance part is not just restricted to the athletic space, as it were. And you preempted me a little bit with your last statement about kids. What would you say? Again, we've talked about like kids and play, and how while we're kids we played a lot. What would you say are like some of the impacts of modernization? And now our parents don't let kids go out anymore. You don't play with your like on your PS4 in the house. All of that stuff. What would you say you found from your work with kids, if you've had extensive work with them? With regards to the effects of modernization, security, all these modern day concerns, and its impact on kids' abilities to play.
I found it. I have worked in schools before. Actually, like I mentioned, like I was earlier, I was saying, like I prefer. Yes, I work with all populations, but I prefer to work with kids for various reasons. One, they remind me to keep my childlikeness, as we are talking about, and also two, because of the great impact, like the difference of impact in working with them. And so yes, I have seen it's actually quite sad, because you have a lot of now, first of all, child obesity, and so with child obesity comes now bullying. So you see that not only is affecting your physical like space, it's also affecting the child emotionally and mentally. And then now you're getting kids at a young age getting into serious depression. Some kids, the other day I heard of a 11-year-old who committed suicide. And this was
11 years old.
And this was because of bullying in school, because of how this particular child
looked. How did the child know that
exactly?
There's such a
You
thing
see,
called suicide?
because they are now spending time on their screens. They're not outside playing and not knowing what's going on. So it's having adverse effects on so many different levels. And so yes, it's very important. And then you find out now in the schools, you'll have the students like, of course, you'll have mandatory PE classes or like swimming classes for the kids. But then you find that like in previous times, let's even take it like maybe 5-10 years back, the children are participating a lot less. So you get a lot of excuses. Oh, I can't play because of this. Oh, I can't play because of this. And so either that, or you're finding that their performance or where they can get to is a lot slower than in the past. But that's because they're not using their body as much as they should be.
And we were talking about mental fortitude some time ago. And I think that kids being able to play sport and being exposed, because I was telling my best friend the other day that I think that one of the bigger metaphors for life is that of a game. Right? You have to take time to practice, and then you come and perform, quote unquote. You have to have a nimble mindset to adjust appropriately. And in any game, there are wins and losses, right? And being able to familiarize oneself, not with losses per se, but the effects of losses in being able to get to wins, right? Because understanding from a young age that those things are tied together might give you more mental fortitude. It's not guaranteed, but overall it gives you like a bigger platform to stand to jump from. So I'm just wondering if there's like some sort of correlation between the higher overall instances of like child suicide and lack of resilience that could be built through means like sports.
Yeah, definitely. Sport teaches a lot of life skills. Like it gives you a lot. Being part of sport, and not even making it to the big teams and the big leagues, just participating in a continuous, like how you're talking about how even as adults you have this one set week a day where you go out and either play football or run or this, that helps you continue to navigate life. So the same way as a child, and I think it's so important for kids to get into sport, is because just having that discipline. So it teaches you discipline, it teaches you like, and you talked about losses, and I would like to come back to that actually. And it's important to teach kids from a young age that a loss is not really a bad thing. A loss is you're learning, like it's not actually, let's take it as mistakes are meant to be made in life. Otherwise, how else are you going to learn and grow from this?
Calibration.
So exactly. So like telling the kids that, okay, it's important to like, get them into that space of thinking of losses as a mistake rather than it's a loss, And unfortunately, we've had parents and maybe teachers who like, put down the child if they don't do so well. And then you find them now not liking the sport. Or another thing I found out as to why maybe kids would quit is early specialization. So you'll have this kid at age 10. Yes, this kid at age 10 is already like a professional. And you're like, oh my God, this child is not a child, And so by the time they're 16, they're tired of life, and they're already like, now what do I do? And they've missed out on all those things you're supposed to go through, So then you get into like this awkward, like you're not really, you haven't been taught like social skills, or you don't have really friends, or like you're just so this tunnel vision, and so of course now it will lead to now early, like sadly early suicide.
I think they say early, like, maybe not the suicide part, but like the person plateaus early.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that too. Yeah.
Because they, it's very.
But
interesting.
there is some sports though that are sadly early specialization sports, like gymnastics. You can't have a 35-year-old gymnast. So you see, you have to also figure out what sport the child is doing, but try, and even if you've decided that this child was going to be a gymnast or a swimmer because those are the early specialization sports, try and get them into doing another fun thing. Like maybe if they're really into like gymnastics or swimming and they're competing for that, on the days that they're not doing those sports, get them into like football or something else where you can learn also the team aspect and you're having fun and you're realizing that physical activity doesn't have to be serious. That way when you're an adult, you're able to still stay in a physically active like state.
Having that T skill building where you're able to have transferable skills within is very, very important. And you see, that's also, I think, a significant gap in a lot of adults. It's almost like some of us are overdeveloped on one side and underdeveloped on the other side, and being able to ensure that balance is there is very, very crucial. So just quickly, do you have any tips for introducing kids to sports, especially like those kind of kids that you said might be like they always come up with excuses?
First of all, I would say as a parent or as a teacher or as a guardian.
As a parent, I think.
Okay, so first of all, find out what your child likes.
Kids, likes to break things.
No, at least like introduce them. I would say like introduce them to various sports if you can. Also again, another thing is that sport is costs money. But like have them play different things, and then from there have them kind of decide. As parents or as like guardians, you tend to assume what your child wants, or like what's best for them, and and of course, yes, it's understandable. Yes, you do know what's good for your child, or you hope that you're giving them or providing for them a space that's going to better them. But talk to them, ask them, do you actually like going for this sport? And then it's also important to know are they just having trouble in the sport that you put them in? Is it just like a hard season,
Mm-hmm.
or are they actually not liking this sport?
Mm.
So like, and that happens if you're just continuously talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, don't specialize in one sport.
Mm-hmm.
Have them do, if you can, individual and team sports,
Mhm.
because you'll find that those two will set them up to be an all-rounder adult when
Yeah.
they have to face, you know, the realities of the world.
Mm.
So, and then another one I would say is, so listen to them, so listen to them, try different sports. And then also don't focus, like, give them that space. You know, don't then now also go to that space and be like overbearing. Allow the coach to take it from there.
Mm.
You know, I've seen parents who come and now want to also co-coach, you know, and you have the kids just like, oh my gosh, this is now so much stress and pressure from my parent, and then there's also, you know, pressure from the coach, and then my teammates, and then there's all of this. So just allow trust, you know, of course, do your research, pick a good club or team, then trust the coach. Like, let them do their thing, you know, have that communication with the coach, but don't try and now overshadow, overtrain, over this, you know.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And to segue a little bit into sports in adulthood, apart from the benefits for adults that we know that, and we've also talked about a little bit, I think one additional benefit would be for parents, for instance, being able to engage with your kids on a different platform as opposed to like, have you washed the dishes? Have you done your homework? Being able to engage with them on it almost provides like a daddy-daughter bond.
Again, going back to the play, so it's beneficial for both the adult and the child. The child is feeling, you know, oh yes, my parent is interested in my sport or play. The parent is being reminded, oh yes, like, let's remember, you know, this childlike nature, let's play together. And then you're right about the creating the bond. Yeah,
and I think to talk about the allowing them the space, it's also almost good for the parents in that when you're able to watch your kids in that space. I'm not a parent, but I mean, we can figure these things out. When you're able to watch your kid in that space, being in their element, playing, you know, you can almost detect how they are growing, how they're changing. You know, you see patterns that you probably wouldn't see when you're just home, you know, sitting and like asking for school results and things like that. So definitely, apart from the benefits that it confers on adults as parents, outside of the benefits again that it confers on the kids, it confers some significant benefits on the parents and the relationship with the kids as well.
I think I'd like to also add another point to that, is that we've just talked about the parents, but also teachers in schools. I found that, let's say the math or the physics or the more serious subjects, so they say, the teachers are usually like, if a child has not done well in their class, they take their sports or PE session to make up for those classes, you know, and that even stresses the child more, because the PE lesson or being outside is supposed to help the brain, like, you know, rejuvenate the mind so that you can come back to class and retain the information. But if you're taking that away from them also, then you're creating a negative result much later. So that's also another important thing for.
And you know, I feel like that's very topical these days with the coronavirus. We generally think of sports, play, all those kind of things as like frivolous activities sometimes. And, you know, appropriate care has to be taken considering like the realities of things like, for instance, the virus. However, I feel like I've heard people almost approach things that have to do with sports with like, oh yeah, these are the first things that we can throw out. For instance, the kid is not doing well, so we throw out the sport, as opposed to recognizing that it's not a frivolous activity. It actually feeds back significantly into the well-being of the person. Interesting. So my mother is older now. What kind of sport would you recommend for her? Swimming.
Or like water aerobics sort of thing.
Why specifically?
Because it's lighter on your joints. You know, like swimming is light, like it's low impact, you know, and you're also horizontal.
You're supposed to teach me how to swim.
Not vertical, that's true.
For the past 5 years.
I know.
Or like 100 billion years.
That's not my fault though. But not entirely my fault. But because swimming is what's this? Horizontal,
You're-
vertical. You're not
yeah,
horizontal. On the
you're
other, you're like
horizontal.
yes, you're horizontal.
Yeah.
So it's low impact on your joints. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that or water aerobics or like walking.
Mm.
Walking also depending, but with the right shoes. I always see people doing exercise with the wrong shoes, and it really frustrates me because you're like, yeah, it may not affect you now, but you're like, weakening your joints earlier than they should be.
I feel like you're speaking to me.
Yeah.
So then it means that when you're doing sports, that whole research that you have to do into looking at for the particular types of shoes you should be is not just like some frivolous.
No, it's actually not. And different sports require different sort of shoes. Even just in the gym, if you're more of a weightlifter versus a cardio person, you have to have different shoes.
Yeah.
So it's not. It's actually to protect you later. Like of course now when you're like young and agile, you don't really necessarily feel the effects.
Yeah.
But now you're reducing your lifespan or like your joints
As
lifespan
it were.
by like not taking care of.
Hi again. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Like I said, we decided to keep it short and digestible. So stay tuned. The concluding part of this episode will hit you very soon. Have fun.